Close your eyes now, if you haven't already. Let your body soften into the space it's resting in. There is no urgency, here only calm, only quiet curiosity. Tonight we drift into a story older than memory, older than the mountains and the seas, older even than the stars you see in the night sky. It is the story of evolution, a soft, slow unfolding that began billions of years ago and continues even now as silently as your own breath. You are part of this story. Every living thing is. From the tiniest floating plankton to the tallest, most ancient trees, from birds gliding on coastal winds to bacteria that live beneath the seafloor, all of life, in its endless forms, is woven together by a process so gradual, so intricate, that it moves like a dream across deep time. That process is evolution. But we won't rush into definitions or diagrams just yet. Instead, let's begin the way most stories do, by imagining a world long before our own. Picture Earth, not as we know it today, but as it might have been over 4 billion years ago. The sky is heavy with clouds, the surface warm and tumultuous. The air smells faintly of minerals and sea spray. No trees, no animals, not even grass, just oceans, stretching under a pale sun, and volcanic rock rising in quiet humps through the mist. And yet, even here, something stirs, something impossibly small, the very first whisper of life. These earliest form-simple, single-celled creatures were not so different from the microorganisms still floating through oceans today. They had no bones, no eyes, no minds, but they carried something precious, the capacity to copy themselves, to change, and over vast expanses of time to give rise to something new. From these humble beginnings, life began its long ascent. There was no plan, no blueprint, just tiny changes, unfolding one generation at a time, changes so subtle that none would be noticeable in the moment. But across eons, these soft variations accumulated, and life slowly became more complex. As you lie here now, calm and still, consider how profound that truly is. Every feature of your body, your hands, your lungs, your voice, even the thoughts, quietly drifting through your mind, is the result of changes shaped over millions upon millions of years, and not just in humans. The same is true for the wings of birds, the petals of flowers, the glowing algae that drift through dark waters. In this way, evolution is not only a biological concept, it is a universal poem, a silent rhythm playing beneath the surface of life. It asks for no belief, no allegiance. It simply is. A soft unfolding of forms, shaped by time, by environment, and by the subtle guidance of survival. And unlike many human stories, this one has no clear beginning, no sharp lines. It does not begin with a single moment of creation, but with many, spread like seeds across the fabric of Earth's history. It is not a story of perfection or purpose, but of persistence. Life doesn't strive to be perfect. It only needs to be enough to endure, to adapt, and to pass on what it can. As we explore this idea further, we will see how evolution explains the patterns we find in nature, how it accounts for both the differences and the deep commonalities among living things. You'll begin to understand how whales and wolves share ancient ancestors, how flowers and fungi, so different to our eyes, emerged from similar roots. We'll journey softly through the mechanics of natural selection, through the quiet power of adaptation, and into the slow branching tree of species that rise, change, and sometimes fade. For now, though, it is enough simply to be here, at the edge of the story, listening. You are, in a way, the latest chapter in this grand unfolding. Your body is made from stardust and seawater, from ancient molecules shaped by time and pressure and chance. And somewhere within you, in the spiral of your DNA, the echoes of life's first breath still linger. This is the wonder of evolution, not a loud or violent tale, but a continuous one, gentle, patient, endlessly creative. And so, as you drift further into stillness tonight, let yourself be held by this idea that you are not separate from nature, but a thread within its tapestry. You are both ancient and new, a ripple in a current that began long before you and will continue long after. In the quiet hours ahead, we'll begin to trace the path of that current. But for now, rest in the knowledge that you are part of something vast and calm, a slow dance of change, winding through time, soft as breath. Let it carry you gently into sleep. Part 2. What is evolution? Softly defined. Now that we are resting gently within the atmosphere of this ancient tale, let us softly begin to define what we mean by evolution, not in the rigid language of textbooks, but in the calm, flowing manner that suits a sleepy mind. Evolution, in its simplest form, is the gradual change in living things over time. That's all. Just change, but not chaotic or haphazard change. Rather a slow, natural unfolding shaped, not by intentions, but by the soft touch of time, environment, and survival. You may imagine it as a river endlessly flowing, sometimes wide, sometimes narrow, at times rushing, at other times barely a ripple. Within that river, life carries forward, adapting ever so gently to the bends, stones, and quiet shores it encounters. At its core, evolution rests upon a few key ideas. The first is that all life shares a common ancestry, that the birds above the trees themselves, the moss underfoot, and even you are all related if you go back far enough. Every organism is a distant cousin to every other, bound together by threads of inherited traits passed down through the ages. This is known as descent with modification. Life descends from earlier life, but with slight changes along the way. Just as a grandparent and grandchild may share features, perhaps a nose, or a certain curve to the smile, so too do all species share echoes of their ancestral forms. But over many generations, those small changes accumulate, and entirely new forms may emerge. These changes are not typically dramatic. A wing does not appear overnight. Instead, structures slowly shift. A limb shortens, a fin flattens, a color deepens or fades. And over thousands or millions of years, these gentle changes result in new species, better suited to their surroundings. Another essential idea is variation. No two individuals are exactly alike, even among identical twins. Subtle differences exist, perhaps in voice, in mannerism, in the fine lines that form with age. In nature, this variation is vital. It offers the raw material upon which the environment can quietly select. This brings us to the concept of natural selection, which we will explore in depth later on. For now, imagine it like this. When a certain trait helps an organism survive just a little better, whether it's a thicker coat in the cold or slightly keener eyesight, then that trait may be passed on more frequently. Over many generations, it becomes more common, and the population begins to shift. This process is not conscious. A bird does not choose to have better wings. A flower does not decide to change its color. Rather, these traits arise from mutations, tiny changes in DNA that happen as a natural part of reproduction. Most are harmless. Some are unnoticeable. But once in a while, one of these changes gives a small advantage. And that is how evolution gently moves forward. It's important to remember that evolution has no destination. There is no final form, no perfect creature at the top. Evolution is not a ladder climbing ever upward. It is more like a branching tree. Some branches grow long and fruitful, others end quietly. But no branch is better than another. Each simply reflects a different path taken, a different set of circumstances responded to. Humans are not the pinnacle of evolution. We are merely one of many branches, unique, yes, but not superior, just adapted to our own set of environments and histories. The same is true for every species, from ants to elephants to algae. To understand evolution is to understand time on a different scale. Most of the changes it brings are too slow to notice in a single lifetime. But when we look across the fossil record, or compare the anatomy and genes of different species, a quiet pattern emerges. Consider your own hand, the 5 fingers, the bones within, the way they flex and move. Now picture a bat's wing, a dolphin's flipper, a cat's paw. They all share a similar structure because they all inherited it from a common ancestor. Over time, that basic limb has been reshaped by different needs: flight, swimming, climbing, grasping. The underlying pattern remains, but the details have changed. This is evolution made visible, a soft blueprint carried forward, modified again and again to suit the challenges of each species' life. Even now, evolution is still at work. It did not stop with us. Bacteria adapt to medicines. Plants respond to shifting climates. Insects develop new behaviors. Evolution continues, as it always has, patient, silent, indifferent to borders or beliefs. It is neither cruel nor kind. It does not punish nor reward. It simply allows life to change in response to the ever-changing world. So as you lie here quietly listening, you might reflect on this. The cells in your body contain instructions that stretch back through billions of years of life. You are the product of untold generations of ancestors, each one surviving just long enough to pass something forward. A shape, a reflex, a way of breathing, seeing, digesting, thinking. Evolution is not just something that happened long ago. It is happening still, in you, around you, all the time. And as we continue our gentle journey through this topic, you will see more of the ways this quiet force has shaped the world you live in, from the first sparks of life to the many species that inhabit the earth today. For now, rest with the thought that change is natural, that every living thing is part of a continuum, and that you too are part of that soft, ongoing story. A story written not in ink, but in cells, in stardust, in time. Part 3, Life's Common Blueprint. As we continue to float gently along the current of this ancient story, let us now draw our attention to something quiet and wondrous, the blueprint of life itself. Beneath the endless diversity of creatures that walk, swim, or take to the air, there is a shared structure, a hidden commonality that unites them all. You might think of it as a soft, ancient thread running through the body of a hummingbird and the roots of a tree, through a lizard's scaly skin and the soft flesh of your own hand. Evolution, over its long and winding course, does not start anew with each organism. Instead, it builds upon what already exists, gently altering, adjusting, reshaping. At the heart of this process is a molecule known as DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. You needn't worry about the term. What matters is this: DNA is the material through which life stores information, not the kind of information we write in books or type into computers, but something even more essential: the instructions for building a living body. This molecule, curled like a soft spiral staircase, resides within the cells of nearly every organism. It contains sequences, known as genes, that guide the formation of protein-stony molecular machines that carry out nearly all the work within cells. Whether it's building bone, digesting food, sensing light, or fighting infection, proteins make it possible, and DNA tells them how. What's quietly remarkable is just how similar this genetic blueprint is across the vast web of life. Humans and chimpanzees, for example, share over 98% of their DNA. But even more distant creatures share surprising amounts. We share about 85% of our genes with mice and more than 60% with fruit flies. Even a simple yeast, cell used to make bread and beer, has genes recognizable in our own bodies. Why such similarity? Because life, as it evolves, does not reinvent the wheel. Instead, it reuses, repurposes, and modifies what is already working. This is why so many animals have similar internal structures, even when they look quite different on the outside. Let your thoughts wander, now, to the limb of a human. The bones of the arm and hand, one long upper bone, two lower bones, a set of small bones forming a wrist, and then 5 spreading digits. This arrangement, this gentle architectural planus, not unique to us. You'll find the same plan, in altered forms, in the wing of a bat, the flipper of a dolphin, and the leg of a cat. Each version is suited to a different way of life, flying, swimming, running, but beneath those functions lies the same ancestral blueprint. Evolution has simply reshaped the parts to serve new purposes. This concept has a name: homology. It refers to traits that are shared among species because of a common ancestor. These homologous structures are quiet echoes of life's past, still visible in the present. And it's not just bones. Look at embryosthi, early forms of life in the womb or egg end. You'll find more evidence of our shared origins. For a time, the embryos of humans, birds, and fish look remarkably alike. They all develop small, arch-like structures in the neck region, remnants of ancient gill slits from aquatic ancestors. In fish, they become functional gills. In humans, they contribute to parts of the ear and throat. These soft similarities are not mistakes. They are clues, faint but persistent, that reveal the unity of life's design. They show us that evolution is not chaotic, but cumulative. Each new form is shaped by what came before. Even in plants, these patterns emerge. The leaves of a rose, a maple, and a cactus may look very different, but they all develop from similar tissues. In the cactus, the leaves have become spins in adaptation for conserving water, but they still trace their origins to the same simple pattern of leafy growth. This shared blueprint helps scientists trace evolutionary relationships. Through a field called comparative anatomy, researchers examine how structures in different organisms relate to one another. The similarities are not always obvious, but when studied patiently, they reveal deep connections. It's rather like discovering that all the books in a vast library are written using the same alphabet. Each story is unique, but the letters, the fundamental units, are shared. The unity of life is further confirmed by biochemistry. All organisms, from the smallest bacterium to the largest whale, use the same basic molecules to build and maintain life. They all rely on the same 20 amino acids to construct proteins. They use the same genetic code to interpret DNA. They produce energy using similar cellular machinery. These are not trivial similarities. They are profound signs of shared origin. In the quiet, consistent language of molecules, evolution speaks to us not in words, but in patterns. And so, as you lie here, resting and listening, consider this soft truth, that the cells in your body contain not only your own story, but echoes of stories that came long before you. You are not separate from the tree outside your window or the bird that calls at dawn. You are kin to them in structure, in chemistry, and in ancestry. This is the gift of understanding evolution. It gently dissolves the boundaries we imagine between ourselves and the rest of life. It reminds us that we are part of something vast, ancient, and ongoing. And as we continue our quiet journey through this topic, we will begin to explore how life branched out, how species began to diverge, taking on new forms, new behaviors, new ways of being. For now, though, rest in the calm awareness that beneath all the diversity of life, there lies a single, simple truth. we are all built from the same blueprint. Life, in all its forms, is deeply and quietly connected. Part 4. The Tree of Life. Let us now turn gently to one of the most enduring metaphors in biology, the tree of life. Not a tree with roots in soil, nor branches rustling in the wind, but a conceptual tree, one that stretches through time, branching and budding with each turn of life's long unfolding. You might picture it now, not in sharp outlines, but softly, like something seen through morning mist. At its base lies the earliest life-simple, single-celled organisms that drifted in warm ancient waters more than 3.5 billion years ago. From these humble beginnings, the tree began to grow, slowly and quietly. Each time life gave rise to something new, some small variation, some different trait that helped it endure, that was a bud, a divergence, a quiet fork in the path. Over countless generations, those forks became branches. Those branches grew thick and complex. Some split again, some faded away. And so, the tree of life expanded not upward in competition, but outward in multiplicity. It is not a hierarchy. There is no crown at the top, no chosen species at its peak. Instead, the tree stretches in all directions, each limb representing a lineage of life that has found its own quiet way to survive. On one branch, soft corals pulse beneath the sea. On another, mosses spread across ancient stones. A distant limb carries the frogs of the rainforest. Another, the great whales that sing through saltwater depths. On still another, humankind's own species rests as one small twig, recent and tender. We are not separate from the tree. We are within it. This view of life-own branching, evolving continuum, was deeply understood by Charles Darwin. When he wrote about evolution, he imagined it not as a ladder, but as a great diverging tree. In one of his early notebooks, he even sketched a rough diagram, a trunk that split again and again, its branches labeled simply, "I think." And so it is. The tree of life is not merely poetic, it is supported by biology. When scientists examine the genetic material of different organisms, they find patterns of relatedness. DNA sequences, when compared carefully, reveal how closely or distantly species are related. Like tree rings whispering the age of a forest, these sequences quietly tell the story of descent. Sometimes the story is clear. Humans and chimpanzees share so much DNA that their common ancestor is easily inferred. Other times, the story is hidden beneath layers of change. Yet always, the branching pattern reemerges, life diverging, adapting, finding new forms. In scientific terms, this grand diagram of life is called a phylogenetic tree. Each branch point represents a common ancestor, an organism that lived long ago, and from which two or more lineages descended. Some of these ancestors are known through fossils. Others are inferred from genetic data, their presence traced like footprints in the sand. But even without names or fossils, the structure remains. It is the pattern of evolution, one form giving rise to another, each new species carrying within it the quiet imprint of its past. Some branches on the tree of life end. Extinction, though often gradual, is a natural part of evolution. Dinosaurs once ruled the land, but today they exist only as birds, their closest living relatives. Other branches thrive, spreading into new environments, diversifying into forms as different as elephants and mice, orchids and grasses. There are also hidden roots beneath the tree, organisms so ancient and simple that their place in the diagram is still debated. Bacteria and archaea, for example, are two major branches of microbial life that diverged billions of years ago. They are tiny, often invisible to the eye, yet they form the foundation upon which all more complex life was built. Then, at some point quietly, almost imperceptibly, another lineage emerged. Cells with nuclei, with internal structures, with the ability to form multicellular bodies. These were the eukaryotes, and they gave rise to fungi, plants, animals, and us. It's humbling, in a peaceful way, to know that our species does not stand apart from this process. We do not tower over the rest of life, we are nestled within it. Each breath we take is tied to this web. The oxygen in your lungs was once produced by microscopic organisms, distant cousins from deep in the trees past. Even our bodies reflect this interconnectedness. The structure of our limbs, the arrangement of our cells, the way our embryos develop all are echoes of evolutionary history. We are not isolated. We are embedded. Sometimes people imagine evolution as a race, as though one species outpaces another. But that's a misunderstanding. Evolution is not a race. It has no finish line, no final goal. It simply continues. As life adapts to changing environments, each species that exists today is the product of a long, successful journey. Each one is, in its own way, an expert survivor. Whether it flies, swims, crawls, or blooms, it is the result of countless generations meeting the quiet challenge of existence. So as you listen now, calmly resting, consider your place in this tree, not as something separate from nature, but as a leaf on a living branch. You belong to this world not just because you live in it, but because you come from it. You are part of a lineage that stretches back through time, through mammals, through ancient reptiles and amphibians, through fishes and invertebrates, through single-celled ancestors, all the way to the first flicker of life in Earth's oceans. The tree of life holds all of this. It is not just a symbol, it is a record, a quiet map of how life came to be. And so, as we close this part of our journey, let the image of this tree stay with you. Let it settle gently into your thoughts, like sunlight filtering through leaves. You are part of something vast, something ancient, something still growing. Sleep now, if you wish, knowing that you are cradled by the same story that holds every living thing, a story written in cells and shared through time, the story of life. Part 5, Variation, Nature's Quiet Palette. Let your breath remain steady and calm. Let the body grow a little heavier with each gentle exhale. As we drift onward, deeper into the folds of this soft learning journey, we arrive now at the delicate subject of variation, the subtle differences that quietly color every living thing. If evolution is the brushstroke of time, then variation is the paint. It is the palette from which life draws its infinite forms. No two creatures are exactly alike. Even among those that seem identical to the eye, there are always small differences, soft changes in color, size, shape, behavior. These differences are not flaws. They are the foundation of evolution itself. Consider a meadow, bathed in morning light. A group of rabbits grazes among the tall grasses. At first glance, they appear the same, fluffy, alert, quietly munching. But look closer. One is slightly faster. Another's fur is a touch thicker. One has slightly sharper hearing. These variations are gentle, but they matter. Because in nature, environments are always shifting. Seasons change. Predators pass through. Food becomes scarce, then abundant again. And in these ever-changing conditions, certain traits, however slight, may offer just enough of an advantage to help one rabbit survive a little longer, or reproduce a little more successfully. This is how natural selection begins to operate. But before any selection can happen, variation must exist. It is the raw material of change. Where does this variation come from? The answer lies, softly, within the quiet code of life DNA. As organisms reproduce, their DNA is copied and passed to the next generation. But like any process, this copying is not perfect. Tiny errors may occur. A single molecule out of place. A letter in the genetic script slightly altered. These changes are known as mutations. Most mutations are harmless. Some make no noticeable difference at all. But once in a while, a mutation leads to a change that affects the organism's traits, its phenotype. Perhaps a bird is born with slightly brighter feathers, or a plant with roots that reach a little deeper. If that new trait helps the organism survive or reproduce in its environment, it may slowly spread through the population. Another source of variation is the mixing of genetic material during reproduction, especially in species that reproduce sexually. When two parents contribute their genes to a new individual, those genes recombine in unique ways. This is why sibling 7 in the same family can look so different. The shuffling of genes creates an endless array of possibilities. In this way, every living organism carries a unique combination of genetic instructions. Even in the most uniform environments, nature maintains this soft diversity just in case conditions change. Because they always do. Variation exists at every level. In a forest of oak trees, each one may have slightly different leaf shapes or growth rates. In a flock of migrating geese, one may take a slightly different route or timing. Even in bacteria, those tiny ancient forms of life, variation allows some to survive antibiotics or thrive in new conditions. This quiet diversity is what allows life to adapt, slowly and patiently. It is not forced. It is not frantic. It is simply present, waiting for the environment to nudge it in one direction or another. There is a gentle term for this: heritable variation, differences that can be passed from one generation to the next. It is only these inherited traits that contribute to evolution. If a change occurs during an organism's lifetime, say, a scar or a learned behavior, it is not typically passed on genetically. Only changes written softly into the DNA can carry forward. And over time, these inherited differences accumulate. Imagine again the rabbits in the meadow. Over many generations, the faster ones escape more predators. The ones with thicker fur endure the cold more comfortably. Slowly, these traits become more common. The population changes not in a sudden leap, but in a gentle directional drift. Eventually, if the changes accumulate enough, the descendants may no longer resemble their ancestors. They may become a new species altogether. But none of this would be possible without variation. It is nature's gentle improvisation, the way life tries new combinations, new patterns, new forms. Most do not lead anywhere special. Some fade, some persist, but a few open new paths, and life, ever patient, quietly follows. There are also variations that seem neutral, traits that offer neither harm nor help, yet become part of the fabric of a species. The freckles on a face, the number of petals on a wildflower, these too are part of life's expression, written softly into the genome, passed down without urgency. Even among humans, variation shapes us in subtle ways. Eye color, hair texture, height, voice, even the way we respond to certain smells or tastes, all are influenced by our genetic differences. And beyond the physical, there are differences in temperament, perception, and instinct. We are not copies. We are quietly unique. This individuality is not a deviation from nature's plan. It is nature's plan. Evolution depends on it. Without variation, there is nothing to select, nothing to adapt, nothing to change. And so, as you rest now calm, relaxed, gently breathing, consider how variation touches everything, every pine cone, every finch, every butterfly and fern, even you. You are not exactly like anyone who has ever lived, or will ever live again. You are a quiet variation, part of life's long, branching experiment. And within that truth lies something peaceful. You do not need to be perfect. You need only to be part of the pattern, to carry forward what you can, to rest when it is time. Let that thought settle gently within you now, like a leaf resting on still water. Life varies. Life continues. And always, always, life evolves. Part 6. Natural Selection, Gently Explained. Now, as you remain still and calm, we arrive at the quiet engine that drives evolution forward. It is not loud, it is not fast, it does not choose with judgment or preference. It simply happens naturally, patiently, again and again. This gentle process is known as natural selection. To understand it, let us return for a moment to that meadow we visited before. The rabbits grazing softly in tall grass, some with thicker coats, some with quicker feet, others with ears that seem to catch even the faintest sound. Each of these rabbits lives in a world full of challenges, some obvious, like the sharp eyes of a hawk above, and others more subtle, like the chill of winter or the slow disappearance of certain plants. Each rabbit, simply by existing, must meet these quiet tests. Not perfectly, not heroically, just enough to survive, to find shelter, to eat, and perhaps to reproduce. Here is the soft essence of natural selection. Among the many small variations in a population, some traits by chance offer just enough of an advantage. A thicker coat holds warmth a little longer. Sharper hearing catches the rustle of a fox. Slightly darker fur helps one blend more closely with the shadows. These advantages may seem small, but over time, they matter. Because the rabbits that survive longer are more likely to leave offspring, and those offspring are likely to inherit the helpful traits. Not always, not perfectly, but often enough. Over generations, the traits that help survival, however, modestly become more common, and those that hinder or simply offer no benefit may fade away. Natural selection is not a plan. It does not aim for complexity or intelligence or beauty. It works with what is present, choosing nothing, favoring only what quietly works in the present environment. It is quite simply the filtering of traits through the sieve of life's ongoing rhythm. Imagine again a different setting, a population of birds living on an island. Some have slightly larger beaks, some smaller. When food is plentiful and varied, all survive equally. But imagine a drought arrives, changing the landscape. Only the hardest seeds remain. Now, the birds with larger, stronger beaks are more likely to crack those seeds and survive. Their traits, written softly into their DNA, become more common in the next generation. Over time, the average beak size of the population grows. No one bird chose this outcome. The environment changed, and natural selection responded, not by thinking, but by continuing. This is what Charles Darwin observed, quietly and patiently, during his voyage to the Galapagos Islands. There, among the lava rocks and cactus groves, he noticed that different islands had different species of finches each, with a beak shape suited to the food available on that island. Long, narrow beaks for probing cactus flowers, short, strong beaks for cracking nuts, and all descended, most likely, from a single ancestral species. In that simple observation lay a quiet truth, that life reshapes itself not with intention, but through trial and time. It's important to remember that natural selection does not always favor the strongest or the biggest. Sometimes it favors the most cooperative, the quietest, the ones best suited for blending in, rather than standing out. In some cases, traits are selected because they improve an organism's chances of reproducing, not merely surviving. This is called sexual selection, and we'll explore it more fully in another part. But it too is a kind of natural selection, driven by preferences and pressures in the quiet theater of mating. In all cases, 3 ingredients are needed for natural selection to occur. 1. Variation differences must exist within a population. As we've seen, this variation arises through mutations and genetic recombination. 2. Differential survival or reproduction. Some individuals, because of their traits, must survive or reproduce more successfully than others. 3. Heritability. The advantageous traits must be passed down to the next generation. When these conditions are met, evolution through natural selection becomes not just possible, but inevitable. And yet it happens slowly, so slowly that we rarely see it in real time. But when we look across decades, centuries, or millennia, the changes become visible. We see it in the camouflage of insects perfectly mimicking leaves, in flowers shaped to match the beaks of birds that pollinate them, in the thick coats of Arctic mammals, in the eyes of deep-sea creatures that can sense the faintest trace of light. These are not the results of grand design, but of quiet, continuous filtering, a soft, invisible pressure guiding life toward what works, moment by moment. Natural selection, then, is not a sculptor carving with intention. It is more like water, flowing softly around obstacles, gradually shaping the path, or like the breeze, choosing nothing, yet touching everything. And still, it is only one part of the evolutionary story. Other forces shape life, genetic drift, gene flow, mutational part of a greater pattern. But natural selection remains central. It is the process by which life stays aligned with its environment, adapting not through leaps, but through quiet steps. As you rest here, think of your own body not as a static form, but as a collection of traits shaped by countless generations. Your ability to regulate body heat, your eyes, adapted for daylight, your immune system, still learning from every new encounter. These features are not accidents. They are quiet survivals, carried forward through time. Natural selection is not finished. It is not something of the past. It continues in every corner of the earth, wherever life meets challenge, wherever traits are passed on. It flows through forests and coral reefs, across tundra and desert, in microbes and mammals alike, and in you. So let yourself breathe gently. Now, with the knowledge that you are not separate from this process, you are its outcome, its continuation, a living expression of what has worked, softly, across time. No need to strive, no need to perfect. Life, through selection, adapts gently to what is, and always, life goes on. Part 7. Adaptation. Subtle shifts toward survival. Now, as we continue to drift along this tranquil path through the story of life, we come to a concept that feels both familiar and quietly profound. Adaptation. A soft word, but a powerful one. It speaks to life's gentle ability to change, not by force, but by adjustment, not by conquest, but by fit. Adaptation is the process through which living things become more suited to the environments they inhabit. It is the slow shaping of bodies, behaviors, and even instincts formed not in a single lifetime, but over generations. It is nature's way of whispering, "This helps, and try more of this." Let your mind wander now to a desert, vast and quiet, bathed in the pale light of dawn. The air is dry, the ground cracked and sun-bleached, and yet there is life. A cactus, broad and green, holds moisture deep within. Its thick skin resists evaporation. Its spines deter thirsty animals. The plant is not there by chance. It is there because, over time, its ancestors changed slowly, incrementally, to survive such harsh conditions. This is adaptation. Now picture a snowy Arctic plain. Winds sweep low over the ice, and the temperature falls far below freezing. In the distance, a polar bear moves with quiet ease. Beneath its thick white fur is a dense layer of fat, perfectly suited to retaining warmth. Its wide paws act like snowshoes, spreading its weight on thin ice. Even its fur is not purely white, but translucent, scattering the light to help it blend into its frozen world. These are not decorations. They are survival tools passed down through generations, not all at once, but trait by tiny trait. Each one an adaptation shaped by life's long memory. Some adaptations are physical, like the beak of a hummingbird, finely tuned to reach into narrow flowers. Others are behavioral, such as the migration patterns of birds who follow the changing seasons. Still others are physiological, like the ability of some fish to produce antifreeze proteins in their blood, allowing them to live in waters that would freeze the cells of most other creatures. Adaptations arise from the quiet interplay between variation and environment. As different traits emerge in a population through mutation or genetic reshuffling, some of them, by chance, prove helpful. And in a world where only some survive to reproduce, those helpful traits begin to spread. But there's no hurry in this process. It is unhurried and undirected. Adaptation does not chase perfection. It simply settles into whatever works well enough. This is why no organism is truly perfect. Every form of life carries the history of what came before. A penguin, though it swims with grace, still has the structure of wings it no longer uses for flight. A whale, though fully aquatic, carries tiny pelvic bones deep inside its body, remnants of its land-dwelling ancestors. These are quiet echoes, not flaws. They are reminders that evolution shapes by altering what is already there. Adaptation also depends deeply on the environment, which means that what is helpful in one place may be a hindrance in another. A thick coat is wonderful in the Arctic, but burdensome in the tropics. A long neck helps a giraffe reach high branches, but would be of little use to a burrowing mole. Each organism is matched softly, slowly to the place it calls home. And if that place changes, the process begins again. This is why some adaptations appear and then disappear. The mammoth's thick coat was perfectly suited for the Ice Age, but as the climate warmed, such traits became less useful. Eventually, the species faded, and other forms took their place. Life does not cling to what no longer fits. It changes quietly, patiently, endlessly. In some cases, adaptations can arise in surprisingly short periods of time. Consider a species of insect that begins feeding on a new plant introduced by humans. If the individuals that can digest the plant survive better, and if the trait is heritable, the population may shift within decades. Not all evolution is slow, but all adaptation, whether fast or gradual, rests on the same principle. Traits that aid survival tend to spread. It's worth noting that not every trait is an adaptation. Some features are simply byproducts of other changes. Others persist because they are not harmful enough to disappear. But when a trait increases an organism's ability to live and reproduce in a given environment, it earns the quiet title of adaptation. Let your thoughts drift now to water lilies floating on the surface of a pond. Their leaves are wide and flat, resting gently on the water, catching sunlight. Their roots extend into the mud below, anchoring them in place. These features are not random. They are the result of countless generations finding quiet success in still water. Or think of the chameleon, its eyes moving independently, its skin shifting colors. Each trait the answer to a question posed by the environment. Can you see more? Can you blend better? Adaptation is not just survival. It is refinement. It is the slow poetry of life, learning how to fit, how to flourish, how to endure. In humans, we see adaptations too. The shape of our noses, the pigment of our skin, even our metabolism, these are subtle responses to ancestral environments. People from colder regions often have shorter, broader bodies that retain heat. Those from sunny equatorial zones tend to have more melanin, protecting them from ultraviolet rays. Each variation tells a quiet story of adaptation to light, to temperature, to elevation, to diet. Even our brain-sour language, our memory, our social instincts may be the result of adaptations, not for technology or art, but for cooperation, for connection, for surviving together. And still, adaptation continues. As climates shift, as oceans warm, as environments change, life responds. Some species move, some change, some vanish, others appear. Adaptation is not a guarantee of survival. It is simply life's best attempt at harmony. And so, as you rest here, calmly breathing, think of your own body not as something fixed, but as a quiet reflection of 1,000 past environments. You are an adaptation too, a living solution to a long history of small challenges. And tomorrow, and in all the days to come, life will continue to adapt, not through struggle, but through response, through quiet shifts, through what endures. So rest now, knowing that change is not something to fear. In nature, change is the very act of belonging. Part 8. The Origin of Species. As you continue to lie still and breathe softly, we now reach a turning point in our journey, a gentle chapter in the story of life, where small changes, stretched across time, give rise to something new. This is the quiet moment when one species becomes two. It is known as speciation, the process by which new species arise, not with noise or drama, but with gradual change, gentle separation, and soft accumulation of difference. To understand this, let us begin with the simple idea of a species. In biological terms, a species is often defined as a group of organisms that can reproduce with one another and produce fertile offspring. Within this group, individuals may vary, but they are all connected by reproduction. They share a genetic thread that links them across generations. But sometimes something happens to that connection. The thread is stretched, pulled, interrupted, and slowly, so softly, it begins to fray. Imagine now a population of birds living on a large island. They all belong to one species, freely interbreeding, sharing the same forest and food. But one day, a storm carries a few of them across the sea to a smaller, more distant island. There, they begin to live separately, isolated by waves, distance, and time. On the new island, the environment is different. The trees bear different fruit. The winds blow stronger. The predators are unfamiliar. And so, over generations, the birds begin to change. Slightly at first, a change in beak shape, a new behavior, a different song. Back on the original island, the rest of the population continues on its own path, shaped by its own conditions. And after many, many generations, the two groups have changed so much that if they were to meet again, they could no longer interbreed successfully. Their genetic threads, once intertwined, have now diverged completely. They are no longer one species. They are two. This kind of speciation, born from physical separation, is called allopatric speciation. The word allo means other, and patric means place. It is the most common pathway to the birth of a new species through isolation and slow divergence. But there are other, more subtle ways a new species can arise. Sometimes, speciation occurs even without physical barriers. Within the same environment, groups of a population may begin to specialize in different niches. Perhaps one prefers to feed at night, while another is more active during the day. Or maybe certain individuals begin to favor different food sources or courtship behaviors. Over time, these preferences can reduce interaction between the groups, leading to reproductive isolation not because of distance, but because of difference. This is known as sympatric speciation, meaning same place. It is less common and more complex, but it too reveals the quiet creativity of evolution. In plants, speciation can happen in yet another way through sudden changes in chromosome number, a process known as polyploidy. In such cases, a new plant may emerge with a different genetic structure, incompatible with its parent species. It is a new species born almost instantly, not through distance or behavior, but through a shift in its very makeup. These paths to speciation may seem diverse, but all share a common thread. They begin with variation, are shaped by selection, and require isolation, whether physical, behavioral, or genetic. Over time, isolation allows differences to build, and eventually, those differences become enough that reproduction between the groups is no longer possible. What remains is not just separation, but independence. A new lineage begins free to follow its own evolutionary path. This is how life branches. This is how the great tree of life, which we visited earlier, continues to spread its limbs outward. Each split, each fork, each divergence represents a moment of speciation. We see the results all around us. In the astonishing diversity of finches on the Galapagos Islands, in the subtle differences between butterflies that share the same meadow, in the endless forms of orchids and beetles, frogs and fungi. And though we often think of species as fixed categories, nature does not draw hard lines. There are often soft borders, gradual transitions, and intermediate forms. In truth, speciation is not a single moment. It is a process, a continuum. At one end, populations are fully connected, freely interbreeding, moving as one. At the other, they are completely distinct, separate in form and function. Between these two poles lies the gradual drift, where the past begins to give way to the future. This is how one kind of bird becomes two, how one flower gives rise to another, how, over deep time, the vast diversity of life unfolds. And yes, this includes us. The human species, Homo sapiens, emerged from a long lineage of hominins, bipedal primates who lived, walked, and adapted in Africa for millions of years. Our direct ancestors began to diverge from those of chimpanzees around 6 to 7 million years ago. That split was one of countless soft moments in which a new path began. Since then, other human-like species have walked the earth: Homo habilis, Homo erectus, the Neanderthals, each one a unique expression of adaptation, shaped by environment and time. Some of these species coexisted with us for a while. Others vanished, their stories carried only in fossils, and sometimes in fragments of DNA, still present in our genomes. Speciation is not rare. It is the ongoing rhythm of life. It is how the quiet variation we see within a species becomes the deeper difference we see between them. And always behind this gentle process is the passage of time. Not years or decades, but thousands upon thousands of generations, each one a step along the path, each one a whisper in the long story of change. So, as you rest here now, drifting deeper into stillness, consider the quiet truth of it all, that life does not remain still. It flows, it branches, it becomes. And from those branches, new species bloom, not in haste, not in chaos, but in slow, persistent harmony with the world around them. You are part of this. You are one leaf on a great living branch, one expression of a process that began long before you and will continue long after. Sleep peacefully, knowing that change is natural, and that from that change, life finds its infinite, wondrous forms. Part 9. Mutation and Genetic Drift. As we continue to drift calmly through the deep waters of evolutionary understanding, we now come to two of the quietest forces shaping life's diversity. Neither of them is guided by environment or competition. They are softer, still unpredictable, impartial, and often invisible to the eye. These forces are mutation and genetic drift. Let us begin with mutation. Imagine, if you will, the strands of DNA, those soft, coiled ribbons within every cell carrying the instructions for life. Each strand is composed of long sequences of letters, forming a language read by every living organism, a language that tells cells how to grow, how to heal, how to become. But sometimes, as these instructions are copied from one generation to the next, small changes occur. A letter might be replaced, added, or lost. Perhaps a segment is rearranged or duplicated. These small changes in the genetic code are called mutations. Most mutations are neutral. They neither help nor harm. They pass quietly from parent to offspring, accumulating slowly, like dust upon a windowsill. Others may be harmful, disrupting an essential function. But once in a while, just often enough, a mutation proves helpful. It offers a subtle advantage, a stronger shell, a better enzyme, a slightly sharper eye. And when that happens, natural selection may take notice and not deliberately, but by effect. The helpful mutation becomes more common, passed down more often, and gradually, it may shape the course of evolution. Mutation is the ultimate source of all variation. It is the spark behind every adaptation, every new trait, every difference that makes evolution possible. Without mutation, evolution would have no raw material to work with. But mutation is not fast. It moves gently, patiently, at the quiet pace of generations. A single mutation might change only one letter in a billion-letter genome. Yet over time, over eons, these small changes accumulate, and life transforms. Now, let us turn to a force even more passive than mutation, genetic drift. Unlike natural selection, which is influenced by the environment and an organism's ability to survive or reproduce, genetic drift is entirely random. It is the change in the frequency of traits or genes in a population due to chance alone. To understand this, imagine a small population of wildflowers growing on a hillside. They come in two colors, blue and white, determined by a single gene. In this generation, there is no real difference in survival between them. Both colors grow equally well. But one year, a sudden frost comes late in the season, and by chance, more white-flowered plants are damaged. It wasn't because of their color. The frost did not select. It simply happened. And in the next generation, more of the flowers are blue, not due to advantage, but due to randomness. That is genetic drift. A shift, not guided by fitness but by chance. Drift is especially powerful in small populations. When only a few individuals carry the genetic future of a group, random event storms, droughts, accidents can have outsized effects. A rare trait might vanish in a single generation, or suddenly become dominant. In larger populations, these random fluctuations tend to balance out. But in small, isolated groups, drift can quietly reshape the genetic landscape. There's a soft term for this: the founder effect. It describes what happens when a small number of individuals colonize a new Aryan island, a mountain valley, a distant patch of land. Because the founding group carries only a small sample of the genetic variation from the original population, certain traits may become much more common or disappear entirely, not because of adaptation, but simply due to who happened to arrive. Another related phenomenon is the bottleneck effect. This occurs when a population is sharply reduced in size by a natural disaster, a disease, or a sudden environmental change. The survivors by chance may carry only a narrow slice of the original genetic diversity. As the population recovers, it does so with fewer genetic options, and certain traits may be lost forever. Neither the founder effect nor the bottleneck effect involves selection. They are stories written not by success, but by survival and by chance. Together, mutation and drift represent the background rhythm of evolution. Mutation introduces new variation, one letter at a time. Genetic drift shuffles that variation, quietly altering the frequencies of traits over time. Neither force moves with purpose. Neither responds to the environment. They are soft, silent currents that flow beneath the more visible tide of natural selection. And yet, They are essential. Without mutation, there is no novelty. Without drift, even neutral traits might never change. Together, they ensure that life is not a static replica, but a dynamic, ever-shifting mosaic of form and function. In humans, we see the quiet fingerprint of drift in small, isolated populations. Certain genetic disorders appear more frequently, not because they were selected, but because of chance events in the group's history. We also see mutation at work in the subtle differences between individual traits shaped over millennia of silent copying and change. Even now, every human carries a handful of unique mutations changes that were not present in their parents. Most of these go unnoticed. Some may become meaningful. This is how life continues to be variation, by randomness, by the accumulation of quiet difference. So as you rest now, letting your thoughts drift like leaves upon water, consider this, that much of who and what we are, our features, our tendencies, our very presences, shaped by forces beyond prediction or planning, by chance, by change, by time. There is something deeply calming in this realization, that life need not always be efficient or purposeful to be beautiful, that imperfection, randomness, and quiet change are part of the natural order. In this soft view of evolution, we find no judgment-only movement, no pressure to control, only patience to observe. Life unfolds in many ways, some by design, others by drift, but all are part of the same long, gentle story, a story still being written. Part 10. Sexual Selection and Hidden Beauty. Let us now drift into one of the more delicate corners of evolutionary science, one that deals not with survival alone, but with the quiet mystery of attraction, display, and choice. This is the world of sexual selection, where nature selects not just for strength or speed, but for beauty, behavior, and charm. If natural selection shapes traits that help an organism survive, sexual selection shapes traits that help an organism find a mate. It is, in a way, evolution's softer sibling working, not through predation or scarcity, but through the eyes and instincts of others. Imagine, if you will, the male peacock standing beneath a forest canopy. When the time comes to attract a mate, he lifts his tail in a slow, sweeping motion. A fan of iridescent feathers unfolds deep greens and blues, covered in shimmering eye-like patterns. The display is quiet, elegant, and strangely extravagant. From a survival standpoint, it seems impractical. The feathers are heavy. They draw attention. They require energy to maintain, and yet they persist. Why? Because the females find them beautiful, and generation after generation, those males with the grandest tails have attracted more mates, passed on more of their genes, and ensured the continuation of those remarkable feathers. This is sexual selection at work. It may favor traits that would seem useless or even disadvantageous in other contexts. Long tails, bright colors, complex songs, curious dances, these are not about staying alive. They are about being noticed, being chosen. In this way, sexual selection introduces a new kind of pressure, not from predators or climate, but from members of one's own species. There are two broad forms of sexual selection: intersexual selection and intrasexual selection. In intersexual selection, one sex, usually females, chooses among potential mates, often based on certain traits. These may include physical characteristics, like plumage or coloration, or behaviors, like song, courtship dances, or nest-building ability. The choosing sex becomes the filter, slowly guiding the direction of evolution by favoring traits they find most appealing. Over time, this process can lead to elaborate displays. Consider the birds of paradise, whose mating rituals are among the most intricate in nature. Some perform delicate dances. Others create small stages from twigs and leaves. Still others mimic sounds, from whistles to mechanical clicks in dazzling courtship songs. None of these traits are essential for basic survival, yet they persist and grow more elaborate because they are selected by preference. In intrasexual selection, members of the same sex, usually males, compete directly for access to mates. These contests may be physical, as in the antlers of deer or the horns of rams, or they may be ritualized, with display behaviors replacing actual combat. In these cases, traits that help an individual outcompete rivals: greater size, stronger calls, brighter markings are favored. The result is often sexual dimorphism, where males and females of the same species look quite different. In elephant seals, for instance, males are far larger than females and use their bulk to establish dominance over breeding beaches. In many species of songbirds, males are vividly colored, while females remain more subdued, better camouflaged for nesting. Yet even in such differences, the evolutionary logic is soft and consistent. Traits persist because they work not universally, but well enough in the context of attraction and reproduction. It's important to note that sexual selection does not always favor the most extreme traits. In fact, traits can become too exaggerated and start to hinder survival. A tail too long may become a burden. A song too loud may attract predators. When this happens, natural and sexual selection begin to balance each other, a quiet tug of evolutionary tension. Sometimes, preferences themselves evolve. A certain call, once ignored, becomes fashionable. A behavior, once unnoticed, begins to attract attention. Over time, traits and tastes co-evolve, shaping each other in a soft duet that dances through generations. Even humans are not immune to sexual selection. While our mating choices are influenced by culture, emotion, and thought, biology still plays its part. Across societies, people have tended to favor certain trait symmetry, signs of health, confidence, or kindness. These preferences, whether shaped by evolution or society or both, leave soft traces in the arc of human history. We also create our own forms of display through language, art, movement, and even clothing. We signal, subtly or boldly, that we are worth noticing, worth choosing. And though our world is more complex than a forest clearing or a coral reef, the quiet essence remains. Selection, in all its forms, still weaves its way through life. What's striking about sexual selection is how it introduces a dimension of beauty into the evolutionary process. Not beauty as decoration, but as signal. A flower's color, a bird's song, a firefly's glow, each one evolved, not randomly, but through the soft guidance of attraction. This has led some scientists to describe nature as an artist, not with intent, but with repetition. As traits are chosen again and again, patterns emerge: elegance, symmetry, intricacy. The world's diversity is not merely functional, it is expressive. And sexual selection reminds us that the evolutionary journey is not only about endurance, it is also about recognition, about being seen, being valued, being part of a relationship, however fleeting, that brings new life into the world. So as you lie here, in stillness and quiet, consider the hidden beauty in the way life selects, that not all success comes from strength or efficiency, that sometimes the gentle curve of a wing or the rhythm of a dance is what carries genes forward. Let your thoughts settle on the idea that nature does not favor only the bold or the strong, but also the alluring, the creative, and the strange. In the great tapestry of evolution, survival is only part of the thread. The rest is spun from the soft touch of attraction, the quiet pull of one creature toward another. And in that gentle dance, life continues. Part 11: Fossils and Deep Time. Let us now slip quietly into the deeper reaches of evolutionary time, beyond memory, beyond written history, into a realm where the earth itself holds the record of life's unfolding pressed into stone, layer upon patient layer. This is the world of fossils, and the story they tell is not loud, not hurried, but softly etched across the vast canvas of deep time. A fossil is, at its heart, a trace, a whisper of something that once lived, now preserved in rock. It may be a bone, a tooth, a shell, or something more delicate, a leaf's imprint, a ripple left by soft feet in ancient mud, a feather caught in ash. These are nature's memories, held in sediment and stone, and though each fossil is still and silent, together they speak. They form a record, not complete, not perfect, but remarkably rich. Through them we see life as it once was, unfamiliar, evolving, and endlessly changing. To understand how fossils form, picture a calm lake, millions of years ago. A small creature, a fish, a fern, a shelled invertebrate reaches the end of its life. Its body settles on the lake bed. Over time, it is buried by layers of fine silt. Slowly, over centuries, the soft tissues decay, but the harder parts, the bones, shells, or stems, remain. As more sediment builds, pressure and minerals transform the remains into stone. This process, called permineralization, takes ages. But once complete, the fossil becomes part of the earth itself, resting quietly until erosion or excavation brings it back into light. Fossils are rarely preserved in perfect form. They are fragments, glimpses, but even fragments tell stories. The shape of a tooth may reveal diet. The curve of a limb may suggest movement. The arrangement of bones may hint at behavior, even emotion. By examining fossils, scientists piece together the long narrative of life, not just what lived, but when, and where, and how. This leads us to the idea of deep time, a concept both humbling and peaceful. Human history spans thousands of years, but the story told by fossils stretches back billions. Earth formed about 4.5 billion years ago. The earliest evidence of life, simple, single-celled organisms, dates to around 3.5 billion years ago. For most of that time, life was microscopic, living in oceans, cycling nutrients, changing the atmosphere. Then, slowly, complexity emerged. Multicellular life appeared around 600 million years ago, soft-bodied creatures in strange, unfamiliar forms. Some of them, like those in the Ediacaran period, have no known relatives today, quiet mysteries preserved in stone. Then came the Cambrian explosion, about 540 million years ago, time when life, it seems, blossomed suddenly into a kaleidoscope of new forms, trilobites with armored plates, worms with bristles, early ancestors of vertebrates. It was not a literal explosion, but a flourishing, a great diversification of body plans and strategies for survival. Fossils from this time show a remarkable array of shapes, many of which have echoes in modern life. It is here we begin to see the familiar outline of fish, the beginnings of limbs, the first signs of backbones. From these beginnings, life ventured in many directions. Fishes evolved, then gave rise to the first amphibians. Amphibians in turn led to reptiles. Some reptiles became dinosaur-stowering, feathered, swift. Others gave rise to mammals, small at first, nocturnal, and quick. The fossil record shows the rise and fall of these groups not as sudden shifts, but as slow transitions. Species appear, flourish, then fade. Some disappear entirely. Others branch into new forms. Perhaps the most famous of these transitions is the one from dinosaurs to birds. For many years, the idea seemed fanciful, but fossils changed that. In fine-grained stone from ancient lakes in China and Germany, paleontologists discovered dinosaurs with feather sclere, delicate feathers. not imagined, but fossilized in remarkable detail. These discoveries gently redrew the family tree. Birds, we now know, are not separate from dinosaurs. They are dinosaurs, a lineage that survived, adapted, and took to the sky. Fossils also trace the story of our own origins. In Africa, among sun-baked rocks and ancient riverbeds, scientists have found the remains of early hominins, distant ancestors, creatures that walked upright, yet still bore ape-like features. Over time, their skulls changed, their tools became more refined, their footprints more human. From these quiet stones, we trace the path to Homo sapiens, not in a single leap, but through a branching pattern of related species, some of whom lived alongside us, others who left only faint traces in our DNA. Fossils show us not only where we came from, but how far we stretch into the past. They remind us that humanity is young, that most of life's story unfolded before we arrived. And yet, we are part of that story. A recent chapter, yes, but written in the same script. Fossils also offer evidence for patterns in evolution's slow change, occasional rapid bursts, mass extinctions followed by recovery. These patterns, seen over millions of years, help scientists understand how life responds to global change. There is something deeply comforting in this perspective. To see that Earth has endured ice ages, asteroid impacts, the rise and fall of continents. That life, though fragile in the moment, is persistent in the long view. Fossils, with their stillness, invite reflection. They remind us that change is not new, that transformation is part of the Earth's rhythm, that nothing remains exactly as it is, but that, in the great stretch of time, life finds a way to continue. So as you lie here, drifting gently into deeper calm, picture a world long before cities and roads, before names and nations. Picture oceans without fish, forests without flowers, skies without birds. And then, picture those things slowly arriving, not as sudden miracles, but as gradual awakenings, each one leaving a mark, pressed gently into stone. Each one a moment in the great quiet poem of evolution. Sleep now, if you wish, with the knowledge that the ground beneath you holds the memory of life, and that you, too, are part of that memory, alive in the present, yet rooted in the deep past. A soft story, told one fossil at a time. Part 12. Ancient Oceans, Early Organisms. Now, as your breath settles into its slowest rhythm, let us drift backward even further to a time long before forests, before bones, before wings ever caught the wind. A time when Earth's story was just beginning to stir with the first quiet signs of life. We return now to the ancient oceans vast, warm and gently rolling beneath a pale sun. These waters, billions of years ago, were not empty. They were the cradle of life. Within them, in dark corners and shallow shores, something extraordinary began. The very first organismini, simple and silent, emerged in these primordial seas. They were not animals or plants. They had no eyes, no limbs, no thoughts, but they lived, they grew, they divided, they left behind tiny traces in stone whispers of life from a world without sound. These earliest forms were prokaryotessels without nuclei, without organelles, but astonishing in their simplicity and persistence. Some may have formed near underwater volcanic vents, where minerals and heat surged from the ocean floor. Others may have floated near the surface, absorbing sunlight through the first flickers of photosynthesis. And though they were microscopic, these single-celled organisms changed the planet. One of their most profound contributions was the slow, steady release of oxygen. Some early prokaryotes developed a way to harness sunlight for energy. In doing so, they produced oxygen as a byproduct of gas that, at the time, was foreign to Earth's atmosphere. This process, known as oxygenic photosynthesis, quietly began to transform the planet. At first, the oxygen reacted with minerals in the ocean, especially iron-forming rusty layers that settled onto the seafloor. But over time, as the oceans became saturated, oxygen began to accumulate in the air. This led to what scientists call the Great Oxidation Event, roughly 2.4 billion years ago. Slow but revolutionary shift that set the stage for more complex life. But oxygen was not the only story unfolding in the ancient seas. Over millions of years, some of these single-celled organisms began to live in closer harmony with one another. In a quiet evolutionary step, certain cells began to live inside others, forming a partnership so successful that it changed biology forever. This was the origin of eukaryotic cells, the more complex cells that now make up plants, animals, fungi, and ourselves. Inside each eukaryotic cell are tiny structures called organelles, each with its own task. Some generate energy, like mitochondria. Others help build proteins, like ribosomes. The most important feature, however, is the nucleus chamber, where DNA is carefully stored and copied. The appearance of eukaryotic cells marked a soft turning point in evolution. For the first time, life had the cellular machinery to grow larger, to specialize, to cooperate. And so, in the oceans of over 1 billion years ago, simple multicellular organisms began to emerge, still tiny, still without bones or shells, but now composed of many cells working together. Some formed sheets, others took on simple spherical shapes. Slowly, they learned to coordinate, to act not as individuals, but as a whole. This ability to grow as a unit, to divide tasks among cells, allowed life to build complexity. And yet, for a long time, the oceans remained quiet. The seafloor, scattered with microbial mats and simple algae, was a subdued world. Evolution, though never still, moved patiently. Then, around 600 million years ago, something began to stir. This was the time of the Ediacaran biotostrange, soft-bodied organisms unlike anything alive today. They left impressions in fine marine sediments, frond-like forms, quilted ovals, spirals. Some floated. Others may have crept slowly across the ocean floor. Most had no mouths, no eyes, no skeletons. But they were multicellular, they were organized, and they marked the beginning of a new chapter. Some of these early life forms may have belonged to lineages that died out completely. Others, perhaps, gave rise to the ancestors of modern animals. The fossil record here is faint, like shadows in early morning light, but it is enough to show that life was exploring new shapes, new ways of being. Shortly after this period came the Cambrian explosion, which we touched upon before. It was not an explosion in the literal sense, but a blossominga-wide and sudden expansion of forms. From simple, soft-bodied organisms came creatures with shells, spines, eyes and limbs, predators and prey, swimmers and burrowers. Life was now experimenting more boldly. And yet, through it all, the ocean remained the dominant stage. For most of Earth's history, life existed only in water. The oceans provided stability protection from ultraviolet light, a constant temperature, a gentle buffer for fragile cells. It would be millions of years before life ventured onto land. But in these early seas, every major branch of the animal kingdom had its start. Jellyfish-like creatures floated in the currents. Worms wriggled through the sediment. The ancestors of arthropods, the group that would one day include insects, and crab scuttled across the seafloor. One of the most famous creatures from this time is Trilobitea, hard-shelled, segmented animal with compound eyes and many legs. Trilobites flourished for over 250 million years, leaving behind countless fossils. Today they are gone, but their story is preserved in stone, another page in the quiet book of life. Even vertebrates, animals with backbones, began in the sea. Their earliest ancestors were small, soft-bodied swimmers, with notochords for support and the first inklings of a spinal column. From these forms, fish evolved, and much later, some fish would find their way to shallow waters, and eventually to land. But all of that was still far in the future. Here in the deep past, we find ourselves surrounded by ancient ocean swarm, blue, gently lit by a sun far younger than today's. In these waters, the first chapters of evolution unfolded, slowly, softly. Cells became more complex. Life began to grow, to organize, to move. And though these organisms had no eyes to see the world, no voices to name it, their presence marked a profound shift. Earth was no longer a silent rock. It had become inhabited. So, as you lie here now, breathing gently, know that every living thing, every bird, tree, fish, and persunken, trace its origins back to these ancient seas. We are all, in the deepest sense, children of the ocean. And though the surface of the world has changed, though forests now rise and deserts stretch for miles, the ocean remains a quiet cradle, still home to many of life's most ancient rhythms. Let your thoughts settle like sand in still water. Let the story of those first organisms drift around you like early light in a clear tide. Here, in the ancient oceans, life began its long, slow song. Part 13. The Cambrian Bloom. As we float gently forward through time's deep waters, the stillness of the ancient seas begins to stir. Something changes gradually at first, then more swiftly. The quiet tapestry of early life, once so simple and subdued, blossoms into unexpected complexity. This is the Cambrian Bloom, a chapter in Earth's history that scientists call the Cambrian explosion. But here, in our sleepful journey, we will think of it not as a blast, but as a blooming, a slow and wondrous unfolding of form and function. The Cambrian period began roughly 541 million years ago. Before this time, life was mostly soft-bodied and simple, but over a span of perhaps 20 to 30 million years still, a blink in geological time, something remarkable happened. The fossil record shows an unprecedented increase in the variety of animal forms, new body plans, new modes of movement, new ways of sensing the world. It was as if evolution, long humming in the background, had discovered a new octave. Creatures began to appear with shells, spines, and armor. Eyes emerged for the first time, simple at first, then more complex. Limbs began to form, allowing crawling, burrowing, swimming. Predators evolved, and with them, prey developed defenses. It was the beginning of ecological interaction as we know it, a gentle tension between pursuit and evasion, between attack and survival. Among the stars of this ancient bloom were the trilobites, small, segmented arthropods with hard outer shells and large compound eyes. They crawled across the seafloor and swam through shallow waters, leaving behind exquisitely detailed fossils. Trilobites became one of the most successful early animal groups, persisting for hundreds of millions of years. Another Cambrian creature, strange and elegant, was Opabinia, with 5 eyes atop its head and a long, flexible snout ending in a claw. It defies modern comparison. It likely sifted through sediments, using its claw to gather food and bring it to a backward-facing mouth. There was Anomalocaris, a graceful swimmer, and one of the first large predators. It had grasping limbs, a tooth-lined circular mouth, and a segmented body that flexed like a ribbon through the water. Its presence marks a new kind of life form that hunted rather than filtered or grazed. In the midst of these creatures was the delicate Wiwaxia, covered in overlapping scales and soft spines. moving slowly along the seafloor, perhaps feeding on microbial mats. And then there was hallucigenia, a tiny, worm-like organism with long spines along its back and slender legs beneath. For decades, scientists were unsure which way was up. But even this confusion speaks to the novelty of Cambrian life forms so unlike anything we know they stretch our definitions. These were not fantasy beings. They were real, preserved in fine sediments, particularly in locations like the Burgess Shale in Canada and the Chengjiang biota in China. In these rare places, even the soft tissues of Cambrian creatures were fossilized gills, digestive tracts, even nerve cords. What caused this bloom? There is no single answer, only soft, converging possibilities. One idea is that a rise in oxygen levels allowed larger and more active bodies to evolve. Another is the appearance of predation, which may have sparked an evolutionary arms race, with creatures evolving shells, speed, and senses in response to new threats. There may also have been genetic innovations, new patterns of developmental genes that allowed the creation of more complex body plans. Among these are the Hox genesa set of regulatory genes that help determine where limbs and structures grow during development. These genes, shared by all animals, may have unlocked new architectural possibilities. And finally, ecological interactions, competition, symbiosis, feeding, could have added pressure and opportunity, nudging evolution along new paths. Whatever the causes, the Cambrian bloom changed life's trajectory forever. Almost all of the major animal phyla groupings, based on body structure, appeared during or shortly after this time. These include the ancestors of arthropods, mollusks, echinoderms, and chordates, the group to which humans ultimately belong. The chordates emerged here as well. At first, they were small, soft-bodied swimmers with notochords, flexible rods that would later evolve into spinal columns. From such simple beginnings came fishes, then amphibians, reptiles, mammals, and birds. But in the Cambrian, the first steps were just beginning. It's important to remember that this blooming was not chaotic. It was exploratory. Life tried many forms, some that would persist, others that would fade. The earth, in its ancient oceans, became a vast and quiet laboratory of possibility. Not every Cambrian creature has descendants. Some were evolutionary experiments, ending after a few million years. Others left only distant echoes in modern life. But together, they show us the power of evolution, when variation, selection, and time converge. The Cambrian bloom was not a destination, but an opening, a doorway into diversity, a signal that life was ready to reach further, to build complexity from simplicity, and to explore what bodies could become. Even now, when we look closely at animals around us, from insects to fish to mammals, we see traces of Cambrian architecture, segments, bilateral symmetry, eyes, mouths, limbs, all shaped, softly and slowly, during this time. As you rest here, breathing gently, picture a quiet sea lit by pale sunlight. The water is clear, the bottom soft with sediment, and from the sand emerge creatures of every shape, crawling, gliding, filtering, hunting. A new world, full of motion and form. You are not a stranger to this world. Your body, your senses, your very structure are part of the legacy it began. You carry within you a soft memory of that time, buried not in stone, but in your DNA. Let this image stay with you as you drift deeper into calm. The Cambrian bloom was not an explosion. It was a flowering, a turning outward, a promise of the many lives still to come. Part 14. Evolution on Islands. Let us now step quietly ashore onto an island. Not a specific island, not one with a name, but an island of the imagination. A place surrounded by soft waves and time. A place where life, once isolated, begins to change. Islands have long held a special place in the study of evolution. They are like natural laboratories, enclosed, distinct, and often marked by unique conditions. They tell us in clear and gentle ways how separation and environment can shape the form and behavior of living things. When a few members of a species arrive on an island, perhaps carried by wind, water, or wings, they bring with them only a portion of their original population's traits, perhaps just a handful of seeds, a small flock of birds, a single pregnant lizard clinging to driftwood, and from this quiet beginning, a new story unfolds. This is the principle behind island biogeography, a field of study that observes how life changes when placed on islands. It shows us how evolution becomes visible, almost magnified, when organisms are removed from the vast, blended ecosystems of the mainland. Because here, on the island, things are different. There are fewer predators, or none at all, fewer competitors, fewer species overall, but also fewer resources, less space, and limited mates. The pressures are unique, and so, evolution responds. One of the most famous examples of island evolution comes from the Galapagos Islands, a volcanic chain scattered across the Pacific Ocean. Here, in the 1830s, Charles Darwin observed subtle differences in animals from island to island. Most notable were the finchesmal, brown birds with varying beak shapes and sizes. On one island, finches had thick, strong beaks, ideal for cracking hard seeds. On another, they had long, slender beaks suited for probing cactus flowers. These variations, Darwin realized, were not random. They reflected adaptations to each island's food sources. Over generations, isolated by distance and shaped by need, the birds had diverged. They were still related, but they were no longer the same. These are now known as Darwin's finches, and they are a soft, clear example of how new species can form through isolation, gradual change, and quiet adaptation to local conditions. This process, where one ancestral species gives rise to many new species to fill different roles, is called adaptive radiation. It happens often on islands. A single colonizer finds a place with many empty niches, roles in the ecosystem not yet filled. And evolution, working patiently, spreads the species into new forms, each one shaped for a different task. Another example lies in the Hawaiian Islands, remote, volcanic, and brimming with endemic life. The honey creepers of Hawaii, like the Galapagos finches, evolved from a common ancestor. Today, they show an extraordinary diversity of beak shapes, each adapted to a specific flower, fruit, or insect. Some are long and curved, perfect for nectar. Others are thick and short, ideal for cracking seeds. Their songs, colors, and behaviors vary, all quiet expressions of evolutionary branching, drawn out by time and isolation. Islands can also give rise to unusual traits, not just new species, but surprising changes in size and behavior. This is known as island gigantism and island dwarfism. In the absence of predators, small animals may grow larger. Mice become the size of rabbits. Insects become bulky and bold. On the flip side, large animals may shrink. Elephants, when isolated on small islands, have evolved into dwarf forms, their size reduced to match the limited food supply and space. These changes are not fanciful. They are documented in the fossil record in caves, cliffs, and long submerged shores. From Indonesia to the Mediterranean, island fossils reveal versions of animals found nowhere else. Even behavior can shift. Birds that once flew may lose the ability altogether. On many islands, flightless birds have evolved, free from the need to flee predators. The most famous example is the dodo of Mauritius, an extinct, flightless bird that lived peacefully until humans and their animals arrived. Why are islands such potent places for evolution? In part, it is because they are isolated, cut off from the gene flow of larger populations. This isolation allows genetic differences to accumulate more rapidly, undiluted by continual mixing. Islands also create novel environments. With limited resources, unique climates, and unfamiliar challenges, they press life into new forms. And because they often lack large predators or competitors, they give species room to experiment to explore forms that might be too risky on the mainland. Of course, evolution on islands is not always a slow, peaceful process. It can also be fragile. Island species are often vulnerable to extinction. With small populations and specialized traits, they can struggle when faced with new predators, diseases, or human activity. Many of the world's extinct animals were island dwellers lost, not because they were weak, but because they were finally adapted to a world that changed too quickly. Even so, islands continue to be places of wonder, places where evolution reveals its creativity and delicacy. As you lie here now, still and calm, imagine a quiet island green hills rising from a blue sea, a warm breeze rustling leaves, birds calling gently through the trees, and somewhere, perhaps in a shaded glade, a creature unlike any other on earth, not because it is strange, but because it is specific shaped precisely for that place, and no other. This is the gift of evolution on islands. It shows us that life responds not just to broad climates or ancient oceans, but to the small, the quiet, the particular. It reminds us that even the smallest patch of land can become a stage for transformation, and it whispers something soft, yet enduring, that wherever life finds itself on mountaintops, in valleys, or on islands far from view, it will adapt, it will explore, it will become. Part 15. Humans within the story. Now, as we begin to draw our gaze inward toward ourselves, we come to a gentle reflection on where humans fit within this long, unbroken story of life. For all that we have seen so far, the ancient oceans, the trilobites, the feathered dinosaurs, the flowering trees, the truth remains quietly profound. We are part of it, not above nature, not separate from it, but woven into it, a single, recent branch on the vast and ancient tree of life. The story of human evolution is not one of sudden appearance or divine interruption. It is one of gradual change, shaped softly by time, by environment, and by the same forces that molded every living creature before us. Variation, selection, mutation, and drift. We are mammals warm-blooded, with hair, lungs, and live birth. Within mammals, we are primates relatives of monkeys, gibbons, and apes. Our hands, with opposable thumbs, our forward-facing eyes, and our capacity for social bonds, all place us gently within this group. Our closest living relatives are the great ape chimpanzees, bonobos, gorillas, and orangutans. With chimpanzees and bonobos, we share nearly 99% of our DNA. This is not coincidence. It is inheritance. The evolutionary paths of humans and chimpanzees diverged around 6 to 7 million years ago. From that point onward, our ancestors began to change rapidly, but gradually, in response to shifting climates and landscapes in ancient Africa. Some of the earliest known hominin creatures more closely related to humans than to chimpanzees include Sahelanthropus, Tegidensis, Ororuntuginensis, and Ardipithecus. These beings walked upright, or nearly so. Their skeletons show the soft beginnings of a new way of moving on 2 feet rather than 4. Why bipedalism? Perhaps it was to see over tall grasses, to carry food or tools, to travel more efficiently in open environments. Whatever the reasons, it was a quiet revolution. Standing upright freed the hands for other purposes, grasping, gesturing, shaping. Over time, new species emerged. Australopithecus, Afarensis, perhaps the most famous of these early ancestors, walked the earth over 3 million years ago. She is best known through the fossilized skeleton of Lucy, discovered in Ethiopia. Small and lightly built, Lucy stood upright, with a brain roughly the size of a chimpanzee's. But she carried within her the subtle geometry of what we would become. From Australopithecus, the genus Homo gradually arose. This lineage began to show traits we recognize in ourselves: larger brains, more complex tools, a capacity for planning and cooperation. Homo habilis, known as handyman, was one of the first tool makers. Homo erectus, tall and strong, walked out of Africa and spread across Asia and Europe. This species, more than any before it, began to resemble us in form and behavior. They used fire, built shelters, cared for one another. Their bones speak of long journeys and shared lives. And then came others: Homo heidelbergensis, Homo naledi, Homo floresiensici I, a new page in the book of becoming, each one shaped by its own environment, carrying forward the soft innovations of its ancestors. Among these, the Neanderthals, Homo neanderthalensis, hold special attention. Living across Europe and parts of Western Asia, they were robust, intelligent, and capable of making tools, clothing, and art. They lived in caves, hunted in groups, and likely had language of some kind. For a time, Neanderthals and modern humans coexisted, and we know now, through the quiet record of DNA, that they did more than share space they interbred. Most people today carry small traces of Neanderthal genes, silent reminders of ancient encounters. Eventually, around 300 years ago, Homo sapiens emerged in Africa. Anatomically, modern humans saw direct ancestors carrying within them the same body plan we bear today. From Africa, we slowly spread across deserts, grasslands, and mountains, along coasts, through forests, over ice. Our species reached Europe, Asia, Australia, and eventually the Americas. With each step, we adapted our skin color, our diets, our tools, our stories changing softly to match the environments we met. And through it all, we remained part of nature. We hunted, gathered, slept beneath stars, felt hunger, cold, fear, shared warmth, raised children, sang. What sets humans apart, if anything, is not a single trait, but a blend: a large brain, a social nature, a capacity for language and symbolic thought. These gifts allowed us to imagine, to remember, plan, and create. We painted animals on cave walls tens of thousands of years ago. We carved figures from bone. We told stories by firelight. But even these wonders are the result of evolution, not lightning from the sky, but quiet inheritance. Each trait was built, slowly, upon what came before: eyes shaped by light, hands shaped by climbing, voices shaped by breath, minds shaped by connection. And now, here you are, resting, breathing, listening, a living outcome of that journey. Your spine echoes the structure of ancient fish. Your limbs carry the legacy of amphibians. Your jaw, your ears, even your thumb, each one a soft fossil, wrapped in flesh. You are not apart from the tree of life. You are a leaf on its newest branch. You are connected softly, fully to every creature that came before. And though we live in buildings, write with symbols, and ponder the stars, we are still animals. We are still shaped by the earth. Let that thought bring comfort, not concern. To be human is to be part of a long and beautiful continuity, to carry forward the whisper of ancient seas, the rhythm of forests, the vision of ancestors who once watched the moon rise over savannas. Sleep now, if you wish, with this soft knowledge that your body, your thoughts, your life all belong to something much larger, something shaped by time, by chance, and by the quiet unfolding of nature's hand. You are a continuation, and the story is still being written. Part 16. Evolution never stops. Now, as our journey stretches into the present and beyond, let us pause here quietly and remember that evolution is not something that happened once or long ago. It is not frozen in the past, sealed in fossils, or only visible in ancient bones. Evolution is still happening, softly, constantly, all around us. Every breath of wind that shifts a seed, every birth, every small variation in a creature's form or behavior, these are the gentle steps of evolution, still unfolding, still moving. It never stopped. Even now, the living world continues to change. Populations shift, traits drift, new adaptations take root, while old ones fade away. Sometimes the changes are subtle, almost invisible. A bird's wing shortens slightly in response to warming winds. A flower blooms a little earlier each year, nudged by shifting seasons. These changes may pass unnoticed by the casual eye, but to nature, they are part of the quiet machinery of evolution. Let us look for a moment at bacteria, simple, ancient, and extraordinarily adaptable. In hospitals and homes, across soils and seas, bacteria are evolving. They reproduce quickly, sometimes in minutes. With each new generation, mutations arise. Most are harmless, but occasionally one gives resistance to a drug or chemical. When that happens, and the environment includes that pressure such as an antibiotic, those resistant bacteria thrive. This is how antibiotic resistance develops. Not because bacteria choose to resist, but because variation already exists, and the environment favors those that survive the challenge. It is natural selection, happening in real time. It is evolution, here and now. Insects, too, evolve visibly. Mosquitoes develop resistance to insecticides. Agricultural pests become harder to control. Crop plants, constantly bred and selected by humans, are also evolving through artificial selection. Yes, but nonetheless, responding to the forces that shape all living things. Even animals in cities are adapting. Some birds have changed their songs to be heard over traffic. Others have shifted their nesting times to match artificial light cycles. Rats and raccoons, clever and bold, are evolving alongside humans, learning, changing, surviving in new and strange habitats. In the Arctic, the fur of some animals now remains brown longer into the year because snow arrives later. In the oceans, coral species struggle with warming temperatures, and some develop ways to tolerate heat at least for a time. All around us, life responds, and so do we. Humans, though seemingly removed from the rawness of nature, are still evolving. Our genes shift, quietly, from generation to generation. Small variations emerge, some useful, some neutral, some perhaps not yet understood. Studies show that some human populations have developed increased resistance to diseases like malaria or tuberculosis. Others have adapted to high altitudes, with more efficient oxygen usage. In Tibet, for instance, certain genes allow people to live comfortably where oxygen is scarce. In East Africa, the ability to digest milk into adulthood, known as lactase persistence, has become common in certain groups, reflecting a history of cattle herding and dairy consumption. In other places, this trait remains rare. These are not ancient changes. They have occurred in the last few thousand years, a blink in evolutionary time. Even our brains, our behaviors, our immune systems continue to evolve. We are not finished. We are not fixed. And evolution is not only about adaptation to the environment. It also includes the quiet workings of genetic drift and mutation forces that shape our gene pools with or without selective pressure. As technology grows and environments change more rapidly than ever before, some scientists wonder how human evolution might continue. Will we adapt to longer lifespans? To urban life? To new diets, new climates, even to the digital landscapes we now inhabit? The answers are not clear. Evolution does not predict. It responds. It does not strive for improvement, but simply for persistence. And while humans may shape the world more than any species before us, we are still subject to the same rules. What we change changes us in return. The Earth, too, is evolving. The climate warms. Oceans rise. Forests shift. These changes, some natural, some driven by human hands, will influence which traits are favored, which species thrive, which paths life follows. There is no returning to a static past. Life moves forward. And still, the essence of evolution remains gentle. It is not a race, not a ladder. It is a process, a response, a quiet rhythm. A species does not need to become more intelligent, more beautiful, or more efficient. It only needs to survive and reproduce within the moment it inhabits. Some changes take millions of years, others only decades. But in all cases, the river of evolution flows onward, shaping, sorting, selecting. Even now, your own body carries mutations that did not exist in your parents. And if you have children, they will carry new ones still. Most will mean nothing. Some may make a difference. But in this way, evolution continues on generation at a time. So as you lie here, still and quiet, let the truth settle gently within you. You are not separate from this motion. You are part of it. You carry the unfolding of life in your cells, your breath, your quiet thoughts. Evolution never stopped. It does not end with us. We are one branch on a tree still growing. Life, as it always has, finds its way forward, and always, always it changes. Part 17. Evolution and Ecology. As our journey through the story of life begins to curve toward completion, let us now look softly at how evolution does not act in isolation, but always in relationship with the world, with others, with the quiet interwoven web of nature itself. This is the realm of ecology, the study of how living things interact with one another and with their environment. And when viewed through the lens of evolution, ecology becomes more than a snapshot of life in a moment. It becomes a story of coevolution, continuous, gentle shaping between organism and habitat, predator and prey, flower and pollinator, each influencing the other through time. You may picture a forest now, calm and green beneath the slant of morning light. Birds flit from branch to branch. Insects hum softly. Leaves shimmer in the breeze. What you see is not just life, it is relationship. Each creature, each plant, each patch of soil has evolved to fit its place, not just because of the climate, but because of all the other living things that share that space. In essence, evolution and ecology are two sides of the same gentle coin. Ecology describes the patterns of connection in the present. Evolution tells the story of how those patterns came to be. Let's begin with predator and prey, perhaps the most ancient of ecological relationships. As predators evolve sharper teeth, swifter limbs, keener eyes, their prey respond with camouflage, speed, or armor. One shapes the other. Over time, each change in one partner becomes the environment to which the other must adapt. This mutual shaping is called an evolutionary arms race. But there is no violence in the phrase, here only responsiveness. The gazelle's speed did not arise on its own, but in the presence of the cheetah. The cheetah, in turn, grew faster in pursuit of its nimble prey. In every case, adaptation is not absolute. It is relative to the ecological pressures of the moment. The balance between predator and prey does not seek perfection, but equilibrium. Another gentle example is mutualism, where two species benefit from one another. Consider the bee and the flower. The bee needs nectar, The flower needs pollination. Over millions of years, flowers have evolved colors, shapes, and scents that attract specific pollinators. Some flowers open only at night, designed for moths. Others match the tongue of a hummingbird, like a key to a lock. The pollinators, in turn, evolve structures and behaviors that make them better at gathering nectar and, unknowingly, carrying pollen from bloom to bloom. This is coevolution, a duet of adaptation, where neither species acts alone. In tropical forests, fig trees and fig wasps offer another quiet wonder. Each species of fig has its own specific wasp that pollinates it. The wasp lays its eggs inside the fig's hidden flowers, and while doing so, pollinates them. Without the wasp, no fruit. Without the fig, no wasp. Their fates and their forms are entwined. Even the roots of trees carry evidence of coevolution. Many plants form relationships with fungi in the soil, a partnership called mycorrhizae. The fungi help the roots absorb water and nutrients. The plant, in return, provides sugars from photosynthesis. This underground exchange is ancient, invisible, and vital. It shows that evolution is not always about competition. It is often about connection. The same is true for parasites and hosts. Each influences the other's evolution, though often in more complex ways. A parasite may evolve to avoid detection. The host may evolve defenses. In turn, the parasite evolves ways to overcome them. And so the cycle continues, slow, silent, persistent. In ecosystems across the earth, evolution shapes every role. The scavenger, adapted to clean what remains. The decomposer, breaking down fallen leaves into fertile soil. The apex predator, maintaining balance from above. The keystone species, whose presence quietly supports entire communities. And when a species disappears, evolution continues to respond. Other species shift their roles. Some expand, some contract. New relationships form. New pressures emerge. This is the ongoing dance between evolution and ecology, responsive, dynamic, intricate. We must also remember that environments evolve too. Mountains rise, rivers change course, ice ages come and go. As habitats shift, so do the selection pressures on the organisms within them. A forest may become a grassland. A shoreline may sink or swell. With each change, life responds, adapting, moving, or fading. And in today's world, the ecological pressures are changing faster than ever. Climate is shifting. Species are introduced intentionally or node into new places. Habitats are transformed. Some of these changes are natural. Many are driven by humans. And yet, the evolutionary response remains the same. Gentle, cumulative, reactive. Species evolve to meet their environments, whatever form those environments may take. Sometimes, these responses are visible. Urban birds that sing at higher pitches to be heard over traffic. Fish that mature earlier in heavily fished waters. Plants that alter flowering times as temperatures rise. Sometimes the responses are invisible, small genetic shifts, waiting in the quiet wings of time. As you lie here now, listening to the soft story of life's entanglements, consider how deeply every living thing is shaped by its place, and how every place in turn is shaped by the lives within it. You are part of this. Your own evolution, your senses, your emotions, your instincts was sculpted not in a vacuum, but in an ecology. You adapted in the presence of others. Your ancestors navigated social groups, forests, open plains. Their success depended on relationships with kin, with predators, with prey. And so, even now you are connected. Your breath, drawn in quiet sleep, passes through air shared with trees. Your body, at rest, follows ancient rhythms shaped by the turning earth. You are not only a product of evolution, but a participant in ecology. Let that thought ease you into deeper stillness. To understand evolution is not only to know how species change, but to feel the web they belong to. And in that web, you have always belonged. Part 18. Common Misunderstandings. As we near the final branches of this gentle tree of knowledge, let us now pause to quietly clear the mist that sometimes clouds our understanding of evolution. For though the process is slow, natural, and soft in its unfolding, it is often misunderstood, shaped by metaphors that do not fit, or by assumptions drawn from everyday life rather than deep time. Tonight, we will gently set aside some of these misunderstandings, not with judgment, but with calm clarity. We will let the facts settle softly, like dust on quiet shelves. The first and perhaps most persistent misunderstanding is this: that evolution is about progress. It is not. Evolution does not move toward perfection, or complexity, or intelligence. It does not have a goal. It is not a ladder, with higher or better forms waiting at the top. Instead, it is a process of change, of adaptation to a particular environment. What works stays. What does not fades. There is no upward climb, only branching paths, each shaped by the conditions of its moment. A jellyfish is not less evolved than a bird. A beetle is not simpler than a dolphin. Each is well suited to its place in nature. Each is the result of countless generations of selection and survival. In fact, many organisms have changed very little over vast spans of time, and not because they are primitive, but because their designs still work. Horseshoe crabs, for instance, have remained almost the same for hundreds of millions of years. So have certain ferns and deep-sea creatures. They are not stuck in the past. They are simply well matched to their niche. Another common misunderstanding is that evolution is just a theory, as if it were an idea unproven or speculative. But in science, the word theory does not mean a guess. It means a framework of understanding, supported by evidence, tested over time, refined by observation. The theory of evolution, like the theory of gravity or the theory of plate tectonics, not in question among scientists. It is supported by mountains of data from fossils, genetics, anatomy, biogeography, and more. The fact of evolution, that living things change over time and share common ancestry, is as certain as any idea in science. What scientists continue to study are the finer details, the pace of change, the influence of different forces, the unfolding of life in all its gentle variation. A third misunderstanding: that individuals evolve. In truth, it is populations that evolve over generations. An individual may change, grow, or adapt in the course of a lifetime, but these are not evolutionary changes unless they are passed on genetically. A person who becomes stronger through exercise has not evolved. But if a genetic trait for stronger muscles becomes more common in a population over time, that is evolution. Another gentle correction: evolution is often imagined as a series of deliberate improvements, as if living things are trying to evolve or striving to reach a higher form. But evolution has no foresight. It cannot predict the future. It works only in the present moment, selecting traits that help survival or reproduction here and now. Sometimes, traits that were once useful become unnecessary. The eyes of cavefish, for example, have lost their function in complete darkness, yet remnants remain, soft traces of a time when vision mattered more. Other times, traits persist not because they are ideal, but because they are good enough. The human spine, for instance, evolved from a structure meant for four-legged movement. As we began to walk upright, the spine adapted, but not perfectly. Back pain, slipped discs, these are byproducts of a compromise, not a flaw in the system, but a gentle reminder that evolution does not rebuild from scratch. it reshapes what already exists. There is also the idea that evolution requires long ages to occur, and while this is often true, it is not always the case. Some evolutionary changes can happen rapidly, especially in organisms that reproduce quickly, like bacteria or insects. We have observed evolution in real time in laboratories, in the field, in response to changing environments, resistance to antibiotics, changes in coloration, shifts in behavior. Evolution need not be slow. It is simply often unnoticed because it moves through generations, not days. Another quiet point to remember is that survival of the fittest does not mean survival of the strongest or most aggressive. In evolutionary terms, fitness simply means reproductive success, the ability to survive and pass on genes in a given environment. Sometimes that means strength, but just as often, it means cooperation, camouflage, or quiet adaptability. A small, inconspicuous animal that lives peacefully and raises many offspring may be far more fit than a large combative one with fewer descendants. Finally, some wonder how complex organs like eyes or wings could have evolved, step by step. And here, evolution shows its soft, patient power. Eyes, for instance, likely began as simple light-sensitive patches. Even this crude ability to sense light from dark can be useful. Over time, through countless small improvements, these patches deepened into cups, formed lenses, developed nerves. At every stage, each version had value. Wings may have begun as gliding structures, or as tools for balance, temperature control, or courtship. Gradually, they became more refined for flight. Each stage, each step, was functional. Evolution does not require leaps. It builds through gentle increments. And so, as you lie here, perhaps preparing for sleep, let these truths rest with you. That evolution is not a quest for perfection, that it does not think or aim or strive, that it is not a race or a ladder or a plan. It is simply change in response to life's endless variety of conditions. It is the quiet unfolding of form and function, the passage of traits through time, the story of life becoming more of itself. You are not separate from this story, and there is no wrong way to be part of it. Let the simplicity of that thought carry you into deeper calm, that life does not need to be perfect to be real, that every form is part of the whole, that evolution, for all its power, works through softness. Part 19. A unified view of life. As we near the close of our long, gentle journey through the world of evolution, let us now draw the threads softly together into a quiet tapestry, woven from all we've seen, all we've pondered, all we've quietly understood. This is the moment to step back, to breathe slowly, and take in the unified view of life. In all its complexity, diversity, and beauty, life is not a collection of separate stories, but one continuous unfolding, a single origin, branching endlessly, shaped by time, change, and relationship. It began perhaps in a warm, shallow pool or near a mineral-rich vent beneath ancient seas, a tiny cluster of molecules capable of copying itself. From that moment, life began not with a bang, but with a breath, with a single replication, then two, then many. Billions of years passed, and with each new generation, tiny changes emerged. Most faded, some endured. Slowly, cells formed. Slowly, cooperation began. Slowly, complexity bloomed. And from those early cells came everything, all of it. The whales swimming in ocean deeps, the grasses waving across a summer field, the birds gliding across sunrise skies, the mushrooms tucked into forest floors, the people walking, wondering, whispering. All of it shares one ancestry. This is the unifying truth that flows through evolution. that all living things are related. Every cell in your body carries echoes of ancient bacteria. Every strand of your DNA speaks the language of cells that lived before dinosaurs walked the earth. You are not a separate invention. You are an expression and unfolding of something deeply continuous. And yet, life is not uniform. It diverges. It experiments. It explores. Through mutation, selection, drift, and time, the tree of life has branched into countless forms, some large, others small, some complex, others simple, each one shaped by its surroundings, each one carrying its own variation of the original spark. But still, at the genetic level, at the structural level, the similarities endure. The genetic code that builds a butterfly is the same code that builds a tree, a whale, a child. The proteins, the cellular machinery, the very rules of life, they are shared. Even the ways in which organisms grow, move, sense, and interact are built from shared foundations. The wing of a bat, the flipper of a seal, the hand with which you gently rest your head, all these structures follow the same ancestral pattern. One bone, two bones, wrist, fingers, reused, reshaped, repurposed. There is something profoundly calming in this sameness, in knowing that we are not adrift in chaos, but part of a paterna, gentle echoing of forms through time. This unity helps explain the great success of life on Earth, because life, at its core, is adaptable. It can survive in boiling springs, beneath glaciers, inside rocks. It can fly, swim, grow roots, sing, bloom, or lie dormant for decades, all because of this shared structure, this inherited capacity to change. And in recognizing this unity, we also begin to see something else, our place within it. We are not at the center of the tree. We are not the goal. We are one branch among many, a recent offshoot, still growing, still changing, still part of the larger whole. And yet we are also aware. We can reflect. We can look back and see our ancestors not as myths, but as realities preserved in stone, in molecule, in memory. We can learn this story not to dominate it, but to belong to it more fully. The knowledge of evolution does not diminish us. It grounds us. It reminds us that we are part of something ancient, something shared, something still becoming. It dissolves the illusion of separateness. You are kin to the wolf and the willow. You are cousin to coral and cloud forest moss. You are family to fungi, to falcons, to ferns. In every sense that matters, you are connected. This unity carries quiet lessons. It teaches us humility, that we are not above, but among. It teaches us responsibility, that what we do affects the web to which we belong. And it teaches us reverence, that life, in all its forms, is worthy of gentleness and care. When we see the world through evolution's eyes, we see not competition, but context. We see not dominance, but depth. We see the still pond, the sunlit leaf, the ant carrying its fragment of food as part of our extended being. And when we listen closely, the story of life speaks in soft patterns. That survival is not about strength, but fit. That change is not a threat, but a rhythm. That we do not stand alone, but always in relationship. In this view, there is no us and them. There is only life, continuous and curious. And so, as you lie here now calm, still, and cradled by the hush of evening, let this unified vision settle into your thoughts. You are a thread in the fabric of time, a chapter in a book written not in ink but in gene and gesture, a song in a choir that has sung since the world was young. You are not merely alive. You are part of life itself. Let that truth rest with you, soft and deep. Let it hold you gently as the night wraps around your breath. The tree of life continues to grow, and you are growing with it. Part 20, Closing Reflections. And now, at the gentle close of this long and winding journey, we find ourselves resting in the hush of understanding. The story of evolution, which began in silent oceans and rose through branch and bone, ends not with a conclusion, but with a quiet return to stillness. Let us breathe here together, softly. Let the mind loosen its grip. Let the body release. Let all we have learned settle like fallen leaves across a forest floor. You have traveled far not in distance, but in time, through billions of years, through countless forms, through the smallness of single cells, to the vastness of the living earth. You have drifted through warm, early seas, glimpsed the strange beauty of Cambrian creatures, watched the rise of fins, feathers, and flowers, stood beside ancient humans beneath African skies. And now you rest, fully formed, fully present tone expression of life's quiet journey. You are not apart from what you've heard. You are woven into it. The structure of your bones, the pulse of your heart, the breath that gently leaves and returns, all of it carries the imprint of time. This is not a burden. It is a comfort. It means that you belong. You are not an accident. You are not separate. You are part of the living continuity that began with a simple replication and continues, even now, with your breath. Evolution is not finished. It never is. Each day, it moves softly forward, not by leaps, but by presence, by inheritance, by change too small to see, but too persistent to stop. And in this quiet forward motion, life explores itself, sometimes in stillness, like moss growing on ancient stone, sometimes in movement, like whales singing far beneath the sea, sometimes in thought, like this very moment your mind, gently listening, reflecting. The knowledge of evolution can feel vast, even overwhelming, but when seen through soft eyes, it becomes a kind of meditation, a long breath, a way of knowing where you are and what you are. You are a creature among creatures, a branch on the tree, reaching quietly with the rest. You carry the whispers of fish, the grace of early primates, the warmth of mammalian kinship. Your body remembers movements that took shape before there were names, before there were words. Your DNA is not just yours. It is a record of passage, a quiet traveler through time. And now, as sleep nears, you may feel something like gratitude, not loud or pressing, but soft and still. Gratitude for the simplicity of nature's patterns, for the rhythm of breathing, for the way a single story can be told in so many forms. Perhaps tonight, as your thoughts dissolve into rest, you'll carry with you not facts or details, but a feeling, a calm sense that you are part of something ongoing and gentle, something vast but not impersonal, something real. Let your mind wander one last time, slowly now. Picture again the early seas, the quiet unfolding of form. Picture the forests and the flowers, the birds and their songs. Picture the people before you, your ancestors, your lineage, your quiet inheritance. All of them, like you, were part of this story. And long after this moment passes, the story will go on. Life will continue to change. New species will form. New songs will be sung. And somewhere, in the distant future, another being may lie in stillness, learning about how life became what it is. And you, your presence, your breath will be a tiny, meaningful part of that chain. Let that awareness cradle you now, like soft earth. There is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to remember. Only rest, only be, because to be alive is enough. To be a leaf on the tree, a moment in the river, a voice in the long, long song of life that is everything. Sleep now, held by all you have learned, carried by time, cradled by the earth, part of the story, part of the whole.